collapsed highway worries me.
In the previous episode, I journeyed across Blue Gate running errands for Apollo, but apparently that wasn't the end to it. Now Shadi tells me I need to go back and investigate a collapsed highway. I suppose I'd better go check it out.
Let's go to the collapsed highway.
My journey to the site of the collapse was uneventful, as I used the terrain of the broken earth to conceal my presence from both Ark and other raiders. I investigated the collapsed highway, but the cause was still unclear. The collapse seemed to have originated back the way I came, east through the broken earth.
Let's go to that location.
On my journey through the broken earth, I encountered a comet. I could hear it nearby, but by the time I saw it, it was too late to hide. I climbed a cliff, hoping to buy myself a few moments of safety, but the comet was able to find a path up to me. I dropped down, expecting it to roll over the top of the cliff, but instead it retraced its path and came at me from below. If you're ever in a fight with a comet, it's important to keep your cool and not panic like I did just now. Eventually, I found what I was searching for, the ruins of a massive Ark machine. Whatever destroyed this Ark machine must have been responsible for creating the broken earth and causing the collapsed highway. This answered one question, but created several more. In case you're wondering, the little jump I did every time I reached an objective wasn't deliberate. I kept hitting the button for jump when I meant to interact, because I'd been playing nothing but Resident Evil recently. My quest was completed, but I had 22 minutes remaining before I had to extract, and I intended to put that time to good use finding some loot. I thought the abandoned housing project to the north looked promising, so I decided to head there first. When I arrived, I encountered another raider that was already occupying the first building. He wasn't hostile, but I made our encounter brief, because we were clearly here for the same reason, and I didn't want to compete over loot. I didn't find much loot in the next building over, but I did notice a snitch nearby, and I remembered that I needed snitch scanners to upgrade my utility station. The raider saw me shooting the snitch and decided to help. I'm sure he meant well, but I was annoyed because it meant he was heading the same way as me, and would continue competing for the same loot. On the way to loot the snitch, I made the mistake of repeatedly trying, and failing, to climb up the cliff, instead of simply walking around it. And by the time I got up, the other raider was already there looting my snitch. I was tempted for a moment to shoot him, but that kind of behaviour only results in more PvP down the line, so I decided to leave him to it and find another one. Thankfully, it didn't take long for me to find one. The raider was still around, and he helped again. But this time, I made it to the snitch before he could. I last saw him running north just before I looted the snitch, so I made a point to head west so our paths wouldn't keep crossing. I headed west towards the warehouse, and was lucky to find an unlooted snitch on the way. Once inside the warehouse, I usually expect the usual suspects: cops, fireballs, and turrets. The only one that gave me any trouble was a cop that respawned after I cleared the area out and caught me off guard.
I repeat, 10 minutes.
My inventory was full, so it was time for me to extract. The warehouse air shaft extract was already closed, but thankfully, I brought a hatch key, so I was able to head back up the hill to the abandoned housing project hatch. When managed to extract without incident, but without much to show for 15 minutes of looting. That's why I decided to take a break from completing quests and dedicate a few raids to looting. I had some keys taking up space in my stash, so I decided to take out the Dam Control Tower key and head to Dam Battlegrounds. I told myself I would treat it like a personal quest. Head to the control tower, clear it out, and extract the loot. It seemed like a simple enough plan, but as the saying goes, no plan survives contact with the enemy. Who or what was my enemy this time? You'll have to watch to the end to find out. I began this raid by immediately getting lost. Instead of heading to the control tower, I got confused by the name and set my destination to the controlled access zone. I only realised my mistake once I found a locked door inside the controlled access zone my key couldn't open. After some shooting and looting, I set my destination to Control Tower and headed south through the bridge. This time, I saw the comet before it saw me. I was able to take out the comet before it could detonate, which meant I was able to loot its comet igniter. Just as I was arriving at the primary facility, I overheard a raider upstairs talking to another about the control tower. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make out exactly what he said due to the noise and distraction of the arc I was fighting at the time. I decided I would just have to keep going and assess the situation when I arrived. If the door was already unlocked, I would just head to the nearest extract and try again in another raid. Didn't make it to the tower key door, thanks to those arc. And if I'd been wearing a light shield instead of a medium, I definitely would have died then and there. Lucky for me, my struggles up to this point weren't for naught. The door was still locked, which meant all the loot waiting within was mine and mine alone. I found a barricade kit, I didn't hesitate to set it up. If another raider showed up, it could buy me precious seconds to prepare for a fight, but also give me a clear indication of hostile intent. A harmless raider won't break down a barricade to get in. I knew the door blocker was the icing on the cake. No one could get in now without giving me plenty of warning and time to prepare. I had all the loot I was going to get out of this place, so it was time to head to the extract.
Head home at the water treatment elevator.
Remember when I mentioned that my plans for this raid were spoiled by an enemy? As it turns out, the enemy this time wasn't another raider, and strictly speaking, it wasn't the Ark either. Or even my own hubris. No, it turns out the real enemy was one I could never prepare for,
10 minutes to get
and
out.
never beat in a
I
fight.
repeat, 10 minutes.
This time, my enemy was the game itself. A crash, the first one I've experienced so far, at the worst possible time. I relaunched the game immediately and reconnected, but it was too late. A pop and a fireball from the research and admin lobby had both seen me, and for 1 minute and 10 seconds I had been totally defenseless. There's no moral to this story, no learning moment, and no satisfying tale of how I defied the odds and escaped with a big sack of loot. This is simply the story of how I died, and the reason why I'm not using an arpeggio in the next episode. Sometimes, that's just the way the cookie crumbles.